Hello, my friends. How are you? If any of you are audio nerds, come over to the Discord. Lots of great discussions over there. Pulling some questions from there as well. It's really cool. A lot of people helping each other out. Some collabs going. It's really cool over there. I really like it. I'm going to try to maybe do some Twitch stuff at some point soon as well. Just because Discord and Twitch seem to have such great integration. Maybe they're the same company, I don't know. But yeah, check out the Discord. Bring John on here in a second. Where are you at, John? Oh, it says Jon Castelli must upgrade the app in order to join on the invites. What does that mean, John? Do you need to make something happen here? I don't know exactly what's going on with that. How are you guys doing today? What's up, Alex? What's up, everybody? We'll see. So maybe John will have to do a little something. So maybe we restart it in a second. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see if he shows up shortly. Got some good questions this week. I could actually maybe answer some of the ones that apply a little bit less to John. We were just talking about it on the Discord. Let me see what's going on with him. It says when it says go live with and John was on there, it says John needs to upgrade the app in order to go live. So maybe John needs to upgrade his phone or update it. What's going on? Maybe I could just answer some questions. Anybody got questions? What up, Spider? What up, Elias? I don't know how you say your name there. How are you guys doing today? I've been going super crazy. Things have been really busy. Been finishing up some stuff. We got James Arthur's first single coming out on Friday, which I'm very excited about. I've been working on that project a lot. So that's been really cool. I've been doing some sessions. I've been doing some executive production stuff as well. Doing some bigger things. All right, let's see. We got John here. Let's see what happens. Hendrick. Yo.
Sorry about that.
So what was that?
I don't know. It didn't let me in. And then I heard you say I have to upgrade, so I updated it.
Oh, nice. Sounds good. Yeah, it looks like there's some new options here.
Yeah, apparently you can have 4 people now.
Oh, shit. I
was going to talk to you about that. I was like, we should just, like, every time we should get one of our regulars to jump in sometime.
That'd be great. Yeah, I know that it'd be cool to have some of our friends in there, especially specific questions. It might be cool to actually just bring random people on or people on the Discord. Can bring them on and ask some questions. That'd be cool to have some more people involved. Somebody's asking me. What's that?
No, go.
Somebody's asking me about my sprints. I just started doing my sprints again because I had a little foot injury at the end of last year and just the pandemic and moving to a new spot. I finally found a great spot to sprint, which has a nice ocean view once you get up the hill. So next time you're in the neighborhood, you definitely got to come out. It's super fun. And I got to say, as we talk about a lot, getting exercise is the best thing for mental health that I could possibly guarantee. At least for me, it's like anytime I'm not active enough, I don't sleep as well. My mind isn't as sharp. But if I'm active, if I'm in a good routine, I'm just better at everything. I'm happier. Like, it's better than anything. It just makes me happier. And, what's better? What's better than that? How are you doing?
Good. I actually had an amazing kind of life-changing weekend experience health-wise.
Life-changing?
Yeah, I finally got, long story short, but 13 years ago when I was 22, I broke my back and I fused 2 vertebrae together. And then 2 years ago, I was in an Uber accident and I broke my chest and aggravated the back, had a concussion both times. And I finally got my first alignment on Saturday from my friend Tyler Johnson's father, Greg Johnson, who's held in high regard physical therapist. And he explained a lot to me about my faults and how I have about 30 to 40% mobility in my back I'll be 35 on Saturday. And he straightened me out, got my pelvis aligned. My pelvis was a couple of inches off in height, which made me lean to the weaker side. causing me to dip in posture regularly. And now I can't help but stand up straight because of the alignment. And I'm about to start going to see a physical therapist once a week on Friday.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That he recommended to me, one of his students in Glendale. And then a couple of times a year, he'll look at me when he's in Laguna. They have a house in Laguna. So every few months they're in Laguna. So I'm on a new journey. I did my stretches twice a day. I'm like already more flexible. We talked about that a lot when I was sprinting. You could tell how tight I am. Like, I didn't know why. It's actually like I have zero core because of my injuries. He's basically saying like, you have no core. And explaining to me ways to do it. And Niku, my girlfriend, came with me and she took videos of the stretches and I've been doing them. And I just had a nice hour experience with him. And I think it's going to change my life. Like, he's actually convinced I can get upwards of 80% mobility back if I do this regularly.
That's fantastic, man.
So I'm taking this really seriously. It's like priority number one in health life. I played tennis yesterday after the alignment. I was so sore after, like so much pain, but I'm going to go tomorrow morning. So whatever.
But good sore, muscle sore, not injury sore. Exactly.
And that's the difference. Also on that note, it's my birthday Saturday, and this just showed up from my girlfriend right before I went on. So,
hey, that's beautiful.
I got some beautiful flower arrangement.
Like happy birthday week.
Yeah, happy birthday week. Yesterday, she delivered me one of my favorite coffees, coffee beans. And today I got flowers. So apparently I have a birthday week.
That's very exciting. Happy early birthday. I'm sure I speak for everybody when I say that. That's exciting, man. Man, physical health, especially for those of us. I mean, people think a lot about music as something very different from normal jobs, which it is. And we've talked about that a lot. But the part where you sit in front of a desk all day, and all of the new science and speculative science about how bad that is for you is pretty true. So to find remedies for your back, for your neck, for your posture. I know my buddy Dave Elitch, who's I think if not the best, one of the best drummers in the world and a teacher, is doing a lot of movement stuff. He's actually doing, you guys should check him out, Dave Elitch, if you haven't. He is one of the best drummers and teaches one of the best drummers, but a lot of what he talks about is philosophical approaches to it, and especially physical approaches. So he does a lot of movement discussion, and he's doing a 4-week thing about movement and about posture, and it's really underrated for those of us that do this.
So Greg Johnson's wife, Vicki Johnson, they're like a kind of a power couple physical therapy team.
Really?
Very well published, and she has like rewrote the science on posture and actually how we're supposed to stand with our torso over our pelvis. Like, it actually would feel like you're leaning forward because we're so not used to it. But when she stood me up the way, it feels so weird. You actually feel like you're leaning forward, but when you look in the mirror, you're actually straight up and down. It's really wild. So she actually wrote the book on this. So posture is really important. I'm also implementing a very simple new practice I just started for the last 2 days of mixing, which was Sunday and Monday, which I did work on a Sunday because I was off all Saturday to go take care of this treatment. And then Niku got us a hotel room. We stayed in Laguna for the night, got massages, like soaked in the hot tub, saunas. What a nice, anyway, I usually have water next to me because I like to drink a lot of water while I mix, and I'm leaving the water in my kitchen. So I have to walk to break to get water, and I get thirsty a lot. So just enough to stand up and take a break. So I actually have been forcing myself to take breaks by not having water near me. And I know that's a small thing, but to me, that's a big thing because I drink a lot of water and I keep it next to me all the time. So I'm switching up that.
If you are someone who will always remember to drink water, that is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, I need it next to me, or I forget to drink it, and then I get dehydrated and I get headaches, and I'm sitting there just like mixing and producing, and then I forget to do anything. So
yeah.
Good. Figuring out your tendencies and then adapting accordingly is a great overall philosophical thing that we talk about a lot.
Also, listening to Andrew Huberman on the Huberman Labs podcast that I bring up a fair amount at this point. I think his practice of how to learn and the practice of neuroplasticity is actually working for me, because there's a couple of things that he brought up on Saturday that I just thought I was going to forget. because I forget things. And thankfully, Niku filmed the stretches, so I would remember them. But after one practice, I just know the stretches. They're easy. And I'm already extremely mindful of the posture. There's actually nothing that makes me feel like I don't remember anything of what he said. Like, and that's very not like me. And I've been doing the practices that he has, like getting really good sleep and getting enough choline from eggs or supplementation, and having some physical strenuous agitation and stress in the mornings, and really focused intensity, and it's working. So I'm like, this is proof concept.
Well, without getting into his stuff on mine, because I don't know all of the specific things he talks about. It's another benefit of taking care of your physicality is it actually does make your brain better. It's not just happiness. It's not just health. It focus and learning and all that kind of stuff is
something wild that happened with my first. So he cracked me. My first question was, how do you have the confidence to crack someone like that? Which his answer was the obvious 50 years of experience.
I've done this a lot.
Yeah. But he was like, I actually only trusted about 3 to 5 people like in this country to that I would say, let them do this. And like the person he recommended me to for my regular treatment, he won't do it. Like he's not even there yet. But the first thing I reacted to from it was I thought I could see better. Thought I could hear better. My senses were heightened. He's like, yeah, because I'm aligning your vagus nerve to actually extend through your spine and have ability to feel and sense things properly. I always forget about the importance of the vagus nerve and its connection from gut to brain, and that the new microbiome conversations about how what we eat affects our brain. And that's relatively new science, right? That's like within a decade, people are even having this conversation. And I can see better. Like my eyesight is definitely better. After the alignment, I'm brighter. I feel happier, and I'm already a pretty happy person. It opened up a lot. So like just thinking about alignment and how your posture is, and it just seems like a thing. So anyway, I'm hot on that clearly at the moment. It's just happened. And I love to talk about things that I'm hot on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also had a common thread that I thought we can transition to today and kind of gauge your feedback if it's something you'd want to talk about today. But I'm thinking about color a lot recently, and like, you know, we had this conversation the last 2 weeks on terminology and the kind of abstract terminology and what things could mean. Again, like I have this audio school concept in my head, and if a semester had 6 courses, one would be speak like an artist, or how to speak like an artist when it comes to producer engineer course. And colors come into play with this, and the psychology of colors, and thinking about purple as one of the saddest colors, like violet, and red and orange being the color of bright fruits that like we've had to over time in evolution, like seek out red and orange for nutrition, because coming from long distances, and maybe you're disoriented based on how much sleep you have, we've had to have this adaptation. Like thinking about colors in music and what sections could mean, I thought it was a nice way to segue out of the terminology, but into a more kind of cinematic and visual approach to sound, almost synesthesia. I don't have that, but I have this concept that I came up with this morning, kind of like, there's people that have perfect pitch, and then there's relative pitch, and you can develop the association of pitch. If someone plays you a C, you can
remember it. Yeah.
You can remember C and then hear E and G.
Basically, anybody who's spent their childhood, almost everybody I've met who spent their childhood learning like violin or cello, they've heard a tuning fork and tuned to a C or tuned to an A or whatever so much that they could just sing it because they've done it so much.
But that's different than perfect pitch, which is genetic. You really can't really develop perfect pitch. You can maybe come close, but relative is what you would practice and aspire to have.
Well, the interesting thing about perfect pitch, which I don't know if anybody's really been able to answer this question for me, is the idea of A being 440 is not some in nature thing. A was higher or lower back in Bach's time. The actual measurement of a certain note has changed over time, and it's just been standardized. So someone having perfect pitch, it's not like A or C is innate in our brains. So they just have a different connection to pitch memory that is somehow innate. I mean, synesthesia is a different thing. I know a friend who, I've known a few people like this, but a friend who claims that like you hear a squeak on a tire and it registers a certain color in your brain, and that's an E flat, or it's just shy of an E flat. But even the E flat is a construct of culture. You know, like I said, A not always been a 440.
Look, so again, there's probably an expert. There's probably an expert that can talk about this. But culturally speaking, cross cultures, I think would be just tuned to a slightly different resonant frequency. From A440 might come in at a 4 or 430. But again, it's a language. Music is a mathematical language. But in relation to what we know and what we're born into, that concept does exist.
Yeah, it's a different sensory
and for the purpose of
exactly.
And for this purpose of the conversation, like for example, I have a friend that clearly has it to the degree where my piano is extremely out of tune up here because I'm not recording it regularly. And the last time he was here, we were just messing around, and I played an F sharp that I know is very flat just on that keyboard, and he was like, "Well, it's an F, but it's supposed to be an F sharp because it's kind of in the middle and your piano's flat." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Like, you could even tell that I played the F sharp key, but but to him it's an almost F. It's like in between."
Right.
Anyway, so people can develop relative pitch, but can you develop a language that's a common abstract understanding of color and vision? Let's make a distinction that there are people that are colorblind or color shaded, people that can't see the difference between turquoise and blue or turquoise and green. But these people aside, I think there is a language of color that there's something to that can add visual and emotional connections to music. And I would like to understand it better and kind of develop that sense of language and ability in there.
I guess the question for me on that, I mean, I will say I can intellectually make that connection, but when I hear music, I don't see them in colors at all. I make no, in whatever amount of sort of synesthesia thing that I have, it's very structural. I hear mixes and I see three-dimensional architectural structures of depth and width and strength and intricacy, but I don't see any color at all. So I don't know how.
But let's take that completely out, right? I'm actually not even, a layer beyond that. We're not seeing color. I don't even want to consider synesthesia here because there's very few people in the population that actually have that. But certain colors, visually speaking, are known to provoke a certain emotion. So what I'm talking about is the connection of emotion to color somehow portrayed through sonics. Like, if you want to invoke some sadness, knowing that violet is the saddest color, or red,
and why is that?
There are books on this. Like, I'm going to go deeper into this and come back.
So you're trying to basically you want to take an expertise on color theory and apply it to sound.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very usable because people communicate with me through notes that way. Artists specifically, not engineers, not producers. But I was thinking something more orange here, and I get that a fair amount, which to me like means maybe like a sunset, some sort of warmer mood, like the end of a night. Purple to me was a little bit less on the sad note. Even now I've been corrected that it's the saddest of color, but it's more like Prince and psychedelic to me and twilight-y and a little bit like thinking about this is, I guess what I'm bringing up is the conversation of what could these words mean? Like, what does deep mean? What does with mean to people? What is dark? What is gritty? What is snappy, crispy? All these things. What does orange mean? Like, what could the colors of the rainbow evoke? Because they do, right? They do evoke emotion. That's why art can be so compelling. Like, again, what's the relationship in contrast? What does music sound like without black? Like, what if everything is so dense and there's no silent space? And I don't mean silent space of like, let's leave the pre-chorus 4 bars with no sound, but like Climax by Usher, for example, is a great exercise in black in music. In like the
what do you mean? What does that mean?
The silent space. These little blips and pieces come out in that record. Like, listen to that record, right? I wish we could just do this live.
It's funny. I think of space as white. the absence
you can
of color.
Okay, I was going to come to that. You can see it that way, but thinking about the stars light up in the black sky. If there's no black sky, you can't see stars. If there's a white sky, you can't see stars, right? So I think black is a little bit more. No, Bob Horn didn't mix that. That's a Manny mix climax, by the way. I wish it was Bob Horn. I love Bob Horn. Anyway, so seeing the contrast between black and other colors, and that's black is to me silence. I think white can be more in the art world.
It's light versus color, right?
Light versus color. Dark
absence
versus
of
color
light is dark.
different.
Absence of color is white. So it's
Yeah, but I don't think you can see. I don't think the contrast is as stark, sonically speaking, if there was white as silence. That sounds brighter and more. That could be
whether
more.
You're talking about light or you're. I mean, this is now we're talking about things that are not our expertise, but the difference.
When you close your eyes, you see black. You see black, and you see some sort of maybe sparkly nature to your consciousness, like if you can visualize. But you don't see white when you close your eyes.
But a white page before you start drawing, before you start putting something on a canvas. So it's color versus light. So you're talking about it from the light perspective.
Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah, that's it. That's not. Yeah, I don't think we're saying the same thing, and I don't want to say that we're saying the same thing to move on from it. But I feel like we're stuck on this. Black is very different to white. They both evoke contrast, but again, you can't see stars if the sky is white, but you can see something really stark on a black sky. That's why you can see Mars glowing yellow and orange, depending on the time of the year and if it's in visual. But against white, it wouldn't be as stark. So what I think about silence is closing your eyes or closing your ears. You can't hear. That's black to me. That's my version of it. So for this theory or this conversation, it's definitely not white. I don't close my eyes and see white and think, okay, that's silence.
You're connecting light to sound, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So anyway, when I think about the climax, these bits appear, like the hi-hat just kind of appears in the lower left-hand corner of the mix, very filtered, very out of the way, and there's a lot of black around it, and it's just a stark, bold. It's brave. It's braver to have more space. Yeah. And then each color can be brighter, right? Like you can hear, like when the synth in 1999 comes in on that Prince record, there's so much space that it's yellow. It's fucking, it's bright. It demands attention. It's like a trumpet. Thinking about the orchestra and the risers and where things are, like the violin is red and kind of in the focus, and then the trumpet kind of shoots out at you at the end of the rainbow. And anyway, that's just, I've been thinking about this. I kind of want to talk about it. Does that evoke anything in you? Well,
I just don't. Yeah, I understand intellectually what you're saying. I don't ever think of colors in that way. I'd be curious if other people, it's like a light show.
Exactly.
I'd be curious if other people see music in particular colors. It's funny. I rarely get notes about colors in songs, but also I'm not doing as much mixing. I'm doing more production and writing, although mixed notes, I've certainly done hundreds of songs. So I'd be interested if other people have that experience too. I don't categorize different sounds and colors.
Hit Matt in the Discord, and he'll fill me in on what people think about.
Yeah, let's talk about
sound and color. Like, that's a record by Alabama Shakes, like Sound and Color. I mean, this is not I'm not inventing this concept by any means.
For sure, yeah.
This is probably hundreds of years old, but I think that there's some sort of communication, whether it's actually understood and discussed or just internalized. So when someone says, "Yo, make the bridge more sad," I'm thinking of like, well, what evokes the sadness, and is there a color that does it, and then an instrument that or a sonic range of an instrument source that can provoke that.
So you would hear sad as a note. You would translate it to what is the color that I see when I think of sadness, and then from there translate the color to what in the song can evoke that color.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I know people that would do that. There are synesthetic people that do that. I think there are more people that claim that they are, that just say
There's
it.
definitely way more people that claim they have synesthesia than they actually do.
But the fact that there is a corresponding color that is, I think it's universal amongst people that have it, that have been studied. But it is the thing. There are books on this, and I'm gonna read them just because it's something I'm interested in. Whether it has any influence on what I do or not is irrelevant. It just sounds interesting. That if that is the thing, then I want to know that thing, because I think that thing could be interesting.
Look, and it clearly applies to a lot of people. I think it's the exploration is really interesting. I'm interested in it too. I wish that I could hear an orchestra and go, there's purple, there's red, so it's interesting.
I think you could. The point of my course that I would teach on it would be to make people connect deeper on how to evoke certain emotions through color, because I know designers know this language when it comes to digital creations or painting artists. This is a language that
certainly visual art's got a lot of that.
Yeah, and I'm near certain that there's a way to do this acoustically.
This will be the like
orally. Sorry,
the coveted third year elective class. That's like a small class seminar taught by Jon, where you go deep into color theory.
I want to go deep into to notes, for a more general term. What does it mean when someone says something abstract about a sound? And the course would be like we did the last 2 weeks. What could it be? There's no definitive answer, obviously.
It's really more consensus. There might be. It's more like it's more how do we all feel about this, and how can we learn to speak the same language? That's kind of, for those of you that didn't watch the last couple of weeks, that's kind of what we tried to do the last couple of weeks is, what do these things actually mean when we talk about them? It would be cool to have some centralizing of it.
I love this pointing out. There are some artists who won't put two of the same color songs together for a track list, i.e. two red songs can't, well, maybe wouldn't be, I don't know about can't, but can't be together because the songs feel too red. Yes, artists think in colors as they're making these kaleidoscope records and these experiences. And that's what I'm thinking of. Exactly. Like, you wouldn't want to put it next to each other on a record. You also wouldn't want to put those sounds too close together in a mix or in a song. Like, why do you have so much of the same color? Spider and I used to have this concept of, like, records sound like they're coming out of the same box. Like, you'd only have the Korg Triton in 2002 and everything was from that. Like, what if the drums were from a different, what if the drums are from a different box? Like, using an 808 drum machine, using a Juno for pads, we're using a Prophet for leads. We have a guitar through this amp over here, and then an acoustic guitar on the right side. And you start to make things feel more dynamic by default instead of just doubling with the same thing. And then you start getting this homogeny that kind of is counterintuitive for getting width. Like, people ask, how do you get things to be wider? Well, treat the things on the left and right differently. And by default, they're wider. You don't have to put an imager on to make it wide, right?
And if you can go, basically the further you can go back to the origin of the sound, like all the way back to the composition, that's how you're going to get the most contrast. Two parts that dovetail but are not the same, that complement each other, that harmonize or are, disharmonic, dissonant. We talk about this background vocals. If you can record your background vocals with a different mic and different chain than the lead vocal, you will, by definition, or not by definition, but by result, without having to do much processing, get a different sound and get contrast.
So what we're talking about when we give that example is color, right? We're talking about different colors, whether it's gear, instrument, a 60s Gibson J45 has a different tone to a modern Taylor acoustic guitar, right? Like, which one fits the aesthetic more? Do we want both of them for different reasons? Like, these guitars have different color based on different vibrations from different size cavities.
Well, I think we're conflating two versions of the same word, and this is why language is such an interesting thing, because I would say that I have a range of guitars have different colors, but I wouldn't assign a literal Roy G. Biv color to any of them. I would say
no, of course not.
So coloration as a word, not to talk about specific colors, but to talk about the difference between something without color on it. So without something that is clean, something that it doesn't have extra density, extra harmonics, different personalities. Again, these words are so crazy to use.
Right, but what I'm saying again,
you would try to assign actual literal colors.
I think you can. So when you pick up that J45 from 1964, Does it make you play minor chords? Does it make you play a sadder record? Then if you pick up that Taylor that's bright, maybe it makes you play major chords, right? Like I don't agree that you can't distill down a color that is more that is more evoked from when you pick up that. Granted, this is super abstract. I mean, we're like, yeah. But I wanted to. We went so.
It's interesting, yeah.
The last 2 weeks we did this. I kind of just wanted to go a little further into one, just for at least a bit. We can stop at any point. But I actually don't. I think we're talking about the same thing. What does a certain piece of gear, a certain instrument, bring out of you? The instrument doesn't have the color. Yeah. The instrument doesn't have the color.
It's your relationship with it.
Yeah, it's like the setting, the space, what can come from it. When we talk about more pro audio gear, I like when you think about, we talk about converters and these things that we talk about and monitoring. Like we don't want color from them because we want the instruments and the sounds to bring the color to the record. Not
you don't want color. Yeah, this is, somebody said in there too. It's color and sonics, or in musical content. Maybe we should define separately. And this is you're making a connection that is really interesting, and I think it's important to explore it. I think, when we talk about coloration and monitoring or that sort of thing, we're talking about something that affects a sound so you don't get the most clean version of it. And you don't want that in your monitoring setup. You do want that in a cool vintage guitar or a synthesizer or a harmonic saturator and that sort of thing. And then is there a way to define a literal color spectrum based on that, or apply a literal color spectrum of purple, brown, red, blue, white, black? Again,
I don't think
you got to write a book on it.
I want to. I'm not good enough of a writer to do something like that. But
just a matter of doing it.
But the idea isn't that it's a necessity. It's that it could help communicate ideas and emotions. And it works in so many other abstract art fields. Like, why can't it work in music? I think it can. So
I think it probably can as well.
That's my claim, that there is a correlation here.
This is an interesting topic. A couple people asked about it this week, and I was DMing with one person about it. But you talk about this in the context of a school and some sort of curriculum, and I think we're building towards something like that. If people haven't checked it out, there's the LiveWithMattRad website where Bradley has put together show notes for everything. So we're actually trying to document a lot of these conversations. Obviously, we have the clips page and we have the YouTube. Now we have the Discord where we're pinning certain things and having lots of discussions, but a way to kind of accumulate all this knowledge. What are your thoughts about recording schools in general? We've talked about it a little bit, and you did go to you did do a recording school program at one point, yes?
Very briefly.
Yes. See, you make that face. There we go. There, Bradley, slow hand sound there.
Very briefly, for a very specific reason, to learn how to use an analog console just in case I needed to use it. I didn't want to be a dummy in the studio.
Let's give our thoughts on it, and it'll be an uncomfortable thing because I think we have strong opinions, but also can't speak for everybody. What do you think about recording schools? Should people go to a school that teaches them about music production, whether it's, obviously like Berklee School of Music is a music school that teaches a whole lot of things, but I think they have music business and recording stuff. But then there's like actual recording school academies of some sort where you can pay to just learn how to be an engineer. I actually don't know the spectrum of things that are available out there, but do you have thoughts? I mean, I have lots and lots of thoughts.
I have lots of thoughts.
Let's go.
I'll start by saying I'm not here to tell anybody what they should and shouldn't do.
Yes, of course.
We're neither of us here to do that.
So we'll start off by saying everybody's different, and there may be things that meet your needs that would not meet mine.
Let's talk about a positive. I think if you're coming from a small town and you move to somewhere like New York City, Nashville, or Los Angeles, and you go to an audio school, a production school, a music institute, whatever these schools are, there's a higher probability that you will meet like-minded humans and develop some sort of community, around record making, whether that's philosophical late-night conversations or in the studio creating something with people, or running into someone that you look up to in a coffee shop and, getting their attention somehow. There's a lot of positives that can come from that.
This is all pre-pandemic, but yes, keep going.
Yeah. Well,
but keep going. Sorry, I didn't want to derail you.
No, it's hard to make that distinction because at some point, I'm trying to be optimistic. The world will be what we knew it to be.
I should not have interrupted.
No, but I agree. And I also don't think that that's any different now, because if you're in the class and you're on a Zoom class, you can still hop on another Zoom call with a student in the room that's a like mind, that is your peer at your same
I like this.
Experience level.
Let's what the opposite of straw man, talk about steel manning. So steel man an argument. So I'm generally of the belief that almost everybody should not go to a recording school. However, let's talk about what the benefits would be, what situation it might make sense.
That is the only benefit I could come up with. So I wanted to start from the top of benefits. I don't think anybody should go either. I think it's a waste of money. But what I'm saying is, if that's your way, but if that's your way out, if that's your way, granted, yes, you could just move here and you could get an apartment. I love this message that just came up. I'm halfway through a production degree. I highly recommend, but you need to know your why. Exactly. And I think this is a why. I think connections and community is a why. Could you move here with the same amount of money that you were going to spend and just start going out and being social when it's not a pandemic and meeting people and doing things for free? Finding artists that you fuck with on Instagram or anywhere else. And, maybe you could start making records and getting a name for yourself. I think that is more valuable than spending it on music production, because now we have YouTube and we have things like Live with MattRad. We have the Conversations podcast that I'm doing with the homies. And we have a lot, and we have Alex Toomey out there being super, open on Instagram about his, doing Twitch mixing, and same with Josh Goodwin and a bunch of people doing this stuff. Yeah. There's a lot more sources than there used to be. So I think now there are more options to it. I think that you're taught things that aren't like, I'll give you a real time example. I just got a resume sent to me that someone wants an internship at my spot this summer. Due to COVID, I will not be taking any internships this year until further notice. But there was a resume, and in it was all the things that they're prolific in. And I was like, I want someone that doesn't know Pro Tools. I want someone that's never done it. Like Ingmar, my last assistant before Josh now, only knew Ableton, and he was more of a sound designer, but he wanted to be a mix engineer. And I taught him Pro Tools. He learned it. And I love how he uses Pro Tools because he was taught here. Now, not everybody gets that experience, especially during a pandemic. I can't really offer that anymore. But that's what turns someone like me on, someone that's a blank slate, someone that hasn't been to audio school and thinks I know everything about a microphone, when I'm going to tell you everything opposite of what they told you on how to use a microphone and where to place it. And that was on Tony Maserati's interview that I did up here in the loft before we couldn't do the Live at the Gift Shop events. Yeah. And he was like, I learned how to record when I saw someone tell me not to do what I thought I needed to do. And that's when you're doing the most learning. In audio school, that's not happening because some professor that potentially isn't even actually recording people that, make a difference culturally in music is telling you a thing that they did a decade ago that's just not the way things are done. So it's very rare that I get a perfectly well-recorded guitar that just needs a little bit of air, quote unquote, or top end or presence or all the words we talked about. It's like, wow, that sounds like shit. How do I bring out the best amount of that shit in it? Like, that's not something you learn in audio school, right? But that's what needs to happen in real life record making. So I think there are way less benefits from it than are positives. That's my first rant. You go.
Yeah. So, man, there's so many aspects of that what are the reasons to go to school? The reasons to go to school are the literal education, the things you learn there. I'm not saying this is the case, but this is the idea. The literal things that you learn, the facts that you learn, the classes that you take, the tests you take, the things you study, the things you discuss are knowledge that you wouldn't otherwise have. Another aspect that's great about school is the socializing. I actually think that's probably a bigger part of regular school, going to high school, going to college. For most people, it's about the social aspect. You figure out who you are, you meet your friends, you try out identities, you collaborate with people on life. The same thing applies to music, I would imagine, if you're around a bunch of like-minded people. The other thing is job placement. At least that's the idea. I think it's becoming less and less, where, you know, if you have a college degree, that means something, but it doesn't mean what it meant 40 years ago, and there's no guarantee of a job. It's basically our generation and younger that has learned that the hard way. And structure is a big part of it. You learn how to go, okay, I have to be at this class at this time. I have to turn in this paper at this time. I have to fulfill obligations without my parents telling me what to do. It's a slightly different authority structure. And it is beneficial. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the school system is built to make people good contributors to the capitalist system. You learn how to be on time in college so you can be on time for your 9 to 5. It's a little bit cynical to say it that way, but there's aspects of that are really true. Yeah. So what of those things are really, and then, okay, so those are the sort of the positive ideas of those things. What's really valuable in the music industry? Can you learn knowledge in a classroom setting that applies to making records? Yeah, exactly. Somebody in the comments there, I literally only learned structure through going to college. Yeah, Dom there. That's a real thing. And so are the things you're going to learn in college, in music school, do they apply to making records today? And I would say certainly there are things you're going to learn. If you want to learn about analog consoles, if you want to learn about Pro Tools in a structured setting, that's great. I think almost all that stuff can be learned by oneself. But because of the resources of things like this, of YouTube channels, all that kind of shit, there's so much education out there. But then it gets the other thing of structure. If you don't know how to structure your time, maybe there's value in music college or college generally in order for you to learn how to structure things. The socialization aspect, I think, is. I love
how you're trying to.
I'm trying to go through
all of this
because then I'm going to say how it all doesn't make sense. The flip side.
Because everything you're saying can come from school and can come from other things.
Well, so
there's nothing you're saying that is only coming from school at this point. In audio making specifically, we're not talking about doctorate degrees in neuroscience and lawyers to pass the bar exam. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about specifically in creative fields. There's very little bit besides network and community that will come from that, and you can get network and community without school.
Yes, and I think there is something to be said for. There are certain people who need a push in order to do that stuff, and those people will be amazing record makers or artists or engineers or whatever it is.
Also, parents need a push. Something I was going to bring up in my rant is at an early stage of your career or your life, a lot of parents don't understand what audio makers even do, right?
If
you're going to legitimize your parents' view of yourself as you're coming out of your small town to go to audio school, this is a way to tell them a story that that you are on track for something. It's an illusion, and I'm sorry to break it to everyone there, but if that's what gets you to Berkeley or to any other school, if what gets you to Berkeley is that story, or gets you to LA to the recording
music
institute
industry is to start at Berkeley. And so I think there's some value in that for those of you that are lucky enough to have your parents potentially paying for it. I mean, this is the other huge downside of all this is going into debt, I think, is rarely worth it in this context for school. If there's specific things you want to do and there's specific things you want to learn, I think there may be some value in that. But going tens of thousands of dollars into debt for an education you can get on the internet, for motivation that once you get out of school, you're going to have to figure out on your own, is a big price to pay. If it were free, if recording school were free, maybe there's some the value becomes a lot greater. I would say that the tough answer for all of this stuff, and it's critical, but it's also just real shit. The people who are going to be successful making records are going to do it with or without a college education in making records. I actually had the option of going to a recording program when I went to school, but because it was in Michigan and not in LA, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to commit to it as a career. I wasn't sure that I wanted to, I'd already been making records for like 6 or 7 years in high school, and I had a record company. I'd produced some things and some bands were getting attention, but I wasn't sure I wanted to move and just do this. And I ended up being in LA. And then I just did it all the time in my spare time, because it turns out that's the thing that makes people have a career, is the relentless desire to do it. And it's not to say that if you have somebody else structuring your time and you're learning things on a regular schedule, you can't get a great education. It's just that the people you're going to compete against are going to do it whether somebody's telling them to do it or not. That's how I was. That's how you were. That's how almost all the successful people I know, some of them went to school. I know some people that did a semester or two at Berklee School of Music. I know some people that, like you, have done some engineering school, but all of those people, I believe, would have been successful with or without it. Now, there is, again, there are other considerations, like it's your only access to get into, like, it's your only access to get your foot in the door because you're from a small town and you can't otherwise get support from your family to move somewhere. There are all kinds of considerations, but to spend that much money to get an education that other people are getting for free, and ultimately it's your own self-motivation that's going to make your career, it's hard for me to recommend that for most people. But also, everybody's situation is different. I know there are situations, and this is not talking about music school, because music school as a musician is a whole different conversation. This is much more about, you want to go record music. I mean, the amount of hit records that are now made by quote unquote amateurs in their bedroom is getting higher every day. And what that means is
everybody I work with records in their bedroom.
Yeah. Well, especially during the pandemic, which is not an irrelevant part of the conversation. We've now been in this for a year. It doesn't look like we're jumping back into high-fiving strangers in closed rooms anytime soon. No. Whether you're thinking about going to recording school or not, stick your face to a screen and get obsessed about this shit and make a lot of music, no matter what you're doing.
Let me just piggyback off that with correcting, or not really correcting, but offering another word choice on what this person just said. Yes, Matt, talent, Google, goal. I would take talent out and replace it with practice.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
Talent is a myth. Talent is innate. There's very few people that have natural born talents. It's about practicing something. You can get good at a lot of things.
I heard a great quote that genius is a word that people use to excuse laziness. That almost all the people I know that are quote unquote geniuses or do exceptional things have just put in more time than you have, are just more interested in putting more time.
I'm not a talented mix engineer. I'm a practiced mix engineer. I work hard. My ears are, I'm a sensitive person. So like all senses feel extreme to me in a lot of ways. So maybe I have a genetic predisposition to a more sensitive oral stimulation. Like when I was 1 year, like less than a year old, my first memory is fire trucks hurting my ears. Like forever, You've been trying
to tame harshness since then.
Since 1 year forever. Since 1 year old, I'm definitely sensitive. So that might be a predisposition.
Hold on. This is like the kid whose first memory is getting bit by a dog, and then they either are afraid of dogs or they become a dog trainer. Your first memory is a harsh sound, and now all you do is talk about how do I make things not harsh and make them sound
100%.
Nice. That's so amazing.
I don't think I've ever really sat and thought about it like
That's
you just
amazing.
put it, but yeah, absolutely. Because we had these parades that would come outside of my house in Long Island, and I wouldn't go outside. And if I did, my mom was like, "You'd always do this since you were a kid." It's like, yeah, I know. I don't like fireworks. I can't handle fireworks. Same thing.
Look, there's some percentage of the population that just can't hear pitch and can't connect it to their brain, and then there's some percentage of the population.
I don't think it's a can't. I think it's a can't.
But no,
it hasn't been developed. It hasn't been developed.
Well, I'm saying like there's some very small percentage of people that are colorblind. There's a very small percentage of people that are deaf. There are a very small percentage of people who have a significant physical or chemical impairment. It's a very, very small percentage.
Sure.
And then there's probably a very, very small percentage on the other side which is like their brains are wired crazy. They're cut your ear off genius. They can't hold down a normal job, and they just do wild shit, and it happens to manifest creatively. All of us that are watching this, I believe, are not in those two extremes. And it really comes down to, what do you love spending your time doing, and how focused can you be on it, and how much are you going to do it? How much time is it worth to you to mix 1,000 songs for no money? Because by the time you get to 1,001, you're going to be a good mix engineer. If it's not 10,000 hours like you just sit and do it, it's 10,000 hours or whatever the amount of hours is, where you go, I want to keep doing this. This is interesting. Oh, that's cool. I'm going to do another one. I want to do another one. I want to do another one. And 15 years later, you're talented, genius, expert. I mean, that's really what it is.
And especially just to add a little bit to that, thinking about it as high stakes, like everything is high stakes. That's how you get more competitive and healthy competition. I'm not talking about like wanting no good for your peers. Like, I want all my peers to win. I also want to win though. And I also want to be one of the best. I never say I want to be the best at something, because I can only be my best, and I'll be one of them if I can be, if I'm lucky. Yep. But I want to think about that. I want to think about everything being high stakes. Like, you take it that seriously, where you're fucking around and it's fun, but when something comes out online, you put it all in there. Like, 1 million people could hear that, or 100 million people could hear that. Like, the stakes are definitely high. You have a chance of impacting someone emotionally through what you touched. So just adding that layer to things.
Yeah, it's where the motivation comes from and what the standards are. I remember having and by the way, totally shout out to the Discord crew and Zach in there. He said he's deaf in one ear, and it was interesting talking to him and asking him about the balance and headphones. He's like, I just adjusted to it. And he's got that obsession. Yeah. He wants to just make things. So even being nearly completely deaf in one ear, he still adjusts and he goes forward and he's making music. I had a conversation when I was probably 15, when I'd recorded a friend of mine, my friend Dave. We were recording, and we made a recording that we thought sounded really good and really kind of sounded better than all the other local bands. Like, just the quality of it was great. And in my mind, I said this thing, but it's probably likely that he said it, but we were both holding ourselves to a different standard. And one of us said out loud, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to the people around us. We want to compare ourselves to the Beatles and Nirvana and Weezer. Those were the records at the time. It's like, we want our standard to be this high. And it wasn't for another few years before I did something that I felt like lived in that world. But that was that was our motivation, and that was our obsession. And that's what you really need. And school can give you guidance, and school, to bring it back, school can give you structure. Bring it back too. But you really have to just find it in yourself. And whether you go to school or not, if you go to school, you're still going to have to do that right when you get out and you're $100,000 in debt or whatever it is. You may have to work harder, actually, but you have to find that yourself, and you just have to go off of that.
Yeah, I have another kind of thread to pull out from that, the school thing, because I've talked about this before with you. I think you have to learn you got to learn the rules, right? And you can learn some rules in audio school. You can learn like what impedance is. You can learn how to use them, how to plug in a microphone. You can learn signal flow there. You can also learn it on YouTube. You can learn it a lot of different ways. But the people that are shifting culture in music, the people that are pushing away from the pack, like there's a saying, something like, if you're out in front of everybody else, you have all the arrows in your back. Like, people are trying to shoot you down, and the only way to do that is to do it your own way. And people aren't going to fuck with that. And in school, that's not going to go over so well, because school is about camaraderie and about people joining forces and doing things together to have a desired outcome. There's a structure there. And a lot of us don't fit into a lane, and we meet other people in our respected cities and towns that also don't fit that lane, but we can coexist in parallel lanes and be friends and be friendly, but we're competitive and in our own lanes as well. And that's not in school. That's out in the world. So I don't know. I just thought there was something there.
And talking about if in 5 years you and I have some sort of recording program that we do, one of the things that's great about the structure of a company like Google is, at least for a long time, I don't know if this is still true, I think it is, that some double-digit percentage of the time you're supposed to spend as an employee at Google is on a project that is whatever you want. That's how Gmail was created. That's how all these things were created. They go, cool, your job is a coder or an engineer or marketing or whatever, but 20% of your time is you deciding what's interesting and proposing a project and doing whatever you want. Just build something that doesn't have anything to do with your job. It's almost as if, I mean, maybe recording schools are already structured this way, but that's exactly it, is you have to be able to self-motivate and build outside of the structure in order to have a career at this, because constantly, and especially these days, and this is maybe the hardest thing about talking about recording schools, is anything you learn right now in a structured way is going to be different in 2 years. You learn about streaming services, you learn about the business, you learn about recording technology, you learn about what programs do. I mean, learning about a console is like learning about a tape machine, is like learning about a horse-drawn carriage, ultimately. It's just not something that is necessary for you to get work. It can be interesting, and learning about vintage gear is interesting if it responds, if it helps you respond creatively to something. But as a standard practice, it's very hard to teach a structured thing about the music business, because it's changing rapidly, not just the structures as like something outside of all of us, but we are actively changing it. Even just like you talked about, Alex Toomey, Josh Goodwin, what we're doing, the Conversations podcast, these things didn't exist 2 years ago. And yet this is a huge part of how we communicate to people. I learn a huge amount. You learn a huge amount. We talk to collaborators. I'm sure we're getting, whether we can literally see it or not, getting more work off of these things. We're, you know, this stuff as both communicators and people receiving didn't exist a year ago. How is this going to be a part of an education?
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's like the Kanye phrase, trend is always late. Whatever's happening now, you can just learn about what's already happened if you go to school. But music is such a fast-paced art form and such a cultural conversation, it is by definition moving beyond what it was before. That's sort of the purpose of it. And so to go to school for it is maybe there's definitely some value in there, but the question is, what is the cost benefit? And it seems like the cost is very high for most people, and there's so many other ways to get information for free.
Well, on that note, there's nowhere else to go. Honestly, this is my favorite Live with Matt Rad we've done.
I think so too. And you're going to have to write a book about color, because I want to hear more about it. I wish it made immediate sense to me. I know it makes sense to a lot of other people, but if something doesn't make sense to me, it makes me go, okay, how do I, and by the way, this is why you and I are music professionals, because if something doesn't make sense to me related to what we're doing, I now want to go learn about it.
Yeah, I know. I can see that in you. I love it.
I'm just like,
that's why it's my favorite one. I got you thinking.
You got me thinking.
I was thinking about it all morning, and I'm not going to write the book until I read more books about it.
And have more discussions. We'll have discussions on here. I'm sure the folks on the Discord, come hang out on the Discord after, anybody that's out there that hasn't jumped on. It's really interesting, about 150 people, really cool discussions happening there. John, we'll get you on there too. But yeah, I mean, I want to learn, I want to discuss. So maybe we'll get on this next week too, if you do some more, and send me some reading.
I will.
Be good. Thank you guys for checking out. Thank you guys for participating. Great chats in the comments today too. And I'm so glad
for participating.
I'm so glad your physicality has gotten a big upgrade. That's so good for you. You let me know when you want to come sprint this hill. It's super fun.
I want to.
All right. I'll see you guys on the Discord right after. Love you, John. Thank you guys very much. Bye, guys.